All right, Shalom. First and foremost, giving all praise, glory, and honor be to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakaha Qadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, better known as GMS or Ruel. Peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect, the tabernacle of David, beginning with the 144,000 and the rest of the men, women, and children out of the 12 tribes, whom Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai will ultimately have mercy upon in these last days. This is your brother Matizabath from the branch of the Great Millstone here in Melbourne, Australia. And what inspired me to do this lesson was I was on one of the Akims live that they hosted on TikTok, and a topic came up in discussion dealing with the true meaning of the Heavenly Father's name and His Son's name, which we know that to be Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. But more importantly was the fact of the difference between what we call the Lashawan Qadash, which means the holy tongue, right, or holy language, and the Yiddish language, which is German mixed with Slavic and other dialects using the Hebrew characters. And I thought that, this would be a good opportunity to tap into going back to the basics of understanding our language, which is the pure language from the heavens, because this language known as the Paleo Hebrew, which the word paleo means ancient. All right, this is the same language that is spoken of in the heavens. All right, and the scriptures tells you that that it has, in so many words in the Apocrypha, that when it's translated into another language, it has not the same force in it, to show you the power of the language itself. Now, do you need to know it based upon your salvation? And the answer to that is absolutely not, but it's good to learn, the basics. It's good to know a few words. It's good to know the prayer, all right, and also the names, all right, to call upon the names. And I just wanted to take, this opportunity, to help, brothers that may not know, the dealings of knowing about the language, having a thorough understanding, or not so much a thorough, but a basic understanding from the scriptures when it comes to the Lashawan Qadash. Now, first and foremost, this goes back to 1 West, all right? And the apostles mentioned, dealing with, their elders, which would have been High Priest Ariah, High Priest Yaquab, and many others that have helped to pass down this knowledge of our heritage, all right, this language. And what you see here on the screen is a chart dealing with the characters. As you can see at the top, you have the original, what we call the Phoenician script or prototype Canaan script, known as the Paleo Hebrew. And then down at the bottom is the current day script that is used worldwide. All right. And we're going to go into a little bit of the history as to how that change came about between the characters. And Abaratazah will go through a few slideshows, pictures that I have to give you some historical citing to show that our ancestors, our forefathers, used this character, mainly the characters at the top, the Paleo Hebrew Phoenician prototype characters at the top, all the way up until, the Grecian Empire, even the Roman Empire on the coinage, which Abaratazah, we can visit that history and show you some slideshows on that. And so without further ado, let's get into the slideshows now. When you deal with the Hebrew, all right, as I said before, you have what's known as the Paleo Hebrew, which is at the top. Now, the word paleo means ancient when you look it up, all right? And it goes back to our forefather whose name was Eber. All right. Now, when you go into the scriptures, let's get Genesis, the 14th chapter, the 13th verse. The first time you'll see Hebrew, all right, in the Old Testament is right here, Genesis 14 and 13. It says, and there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt in the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, the brother of Eshcol, and brother of Anar. And these were confederate with Abram. Now, when we look up the term Hebrew, you have, if you understand the characters here, which is written in a modern way, it spells out Ibar Raya, Ibar Raya. All right. Now, in the Yiddish, this is how they will pronounce it.
Strong's H, 5680, Ivri, Ivri.
Okay. So as you can see, two totally different pronunciations. All right. And the reason why they pronounce it different in modern terms is because you have something that's called the Nakud system, which was made up by a rabbi by the name of Ben or Eliezer ben Yehudi, along with the Masoretes. All right. And we'll tap into that history a little bit later on in the lesson. So let's look at the outline biblical usage. And it says Hebrew, which means one from beyond, a designation of the patriarchs and the Israelites. A designation of the patriarchs and Israelites. All right. Israelites, Salakia. It says here, Strong's definition, an Eberite, Hebrew or descendant of Eber, okay, or Ibar, all right, which it takes you back to the word Ibar, all right. That's where you get Hebrew from, Eber or Heber, the region beyond, okay. It says Eber, the name of two patriarchs or four Israelites, all right. So that's essentially what the name or the word Hebrew goes back to. It goes back to our forefather Eber. All right. Now, when you deal with the story of the Tower of Babel, all right, what you have to understand is this language of ours, known as the Lashawan Qadash, was here the main language that was spoken of beyond all people on the planet Earth, even going back to the time of the Adamites. All right, because again, the Hebrew language is the purest language, be that of the Lashawan Qadash that is spoken of in the heavens. All right, this is Genesis 11:1, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. Now, that one language was Hebrew. All right. Now, to prove that, first, let's get, what do I have here? I have the Benson commentary, Genesis 11:1 and 2. It says the whole earth was of one language. This even heathen writers acknowledge, and that language was probably the Hebrew. It says they journeyed from the east of Shinar, where Noah has settled when he left the ark, and they were therefore now traveling westward. All right. So even your scholars, when you go deeper into it, I just, quickly grab this commentary, but you can look and search further. You have top scholars based upon their research. They've expounded upon the fact that, yes, during the time of when the Tower of Babel was being built, when everybody spoke the same language, they all conclude that that language was of the Hebrew tongue. All right. So I just wanted to go into that. Now, another thing that I was able to find, let me go back here, was I ended up looking up Eber. And then I found this when I went into the Hebrew tab. All right. Something on the historian of Abu, a Muslim in the 13th century, who said relates to a story noting that the patriarch Eber, the great grandson of Shem, refused to help with the building of the Tower of Babel. And as a result, his language was not confused with the tower, was abandoned. He and his family alone retained the original Adamic language, which he identified as Hebrew, a language named after Eber. Okay, now I don't know how true this person is, this historian is, but I do know that I've heard an account like this in other records, even before I came into the truth, about the story of Eber and stuff like that, and how the language was kept intact. I do remember hearing something like that before I even came into truth. All right, but let's just say, for argument's sake, this did happen, right? Now we know that the scriptures tells us when we go back here, let me get that open real quick, and let's get this here, just to prove to you how powerful the Lashawan Qadash language is. When you go to the book of Ecclesiasticus, the prologue, all right, and the apostles of Great Millstone have touched on this many of times, and I'm going to also touch on it and bring it out for edification purposes. Now, I'm going to read here where it says, "Wherefore, let me entreat you to read it," meaning this book, "with favor and attention, and to pardon us wherein we may seem to come short of some words." And because when you deal with the language of Hebrew, the Lashawan Qadash, it's a language where it's very, straight to the point, unlike the English language where, there's so many words within the English language that have so many different meanings, it can be confusing. So somebody who may be accustomed to speaking another foreign language, such as Chinese or Spanish or French or whatever, when they first come into learning the English language, a lot of times it is said that the English language is one of the hardest languages to learn because so many words have different meanings, whereas the Hebrew language itself is just straight to the point. All right. It has, this is, if it's a particular word, that's what that meaning, or that's what that word means for that particular meaning. It's just it. There's no in between or anything else like that. So that's what he mean when he said to pardon them wherein they may seem to come short of some words, because when you're trying to translate the Hebrew, into another language or whatever, it can be very hard when you're trying to translate and also use transliteration to try to find the right letters and stuff, the words to fit, right? It says, "For the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them." All right. That's why you may have seen, certain brothers within Great Millstone that'll say, if you can learn the prayer in Matthew the 6th chapter in Hebrew, learn the prayer in Numbers the 6th chapter in Hebrew. Why? Because, it's a very powerful language. All right. And it is a language that comes from the heavens, not that you can't pray in English or, whatever the case may be. Yeah. Yahweh Shemel Shah can still hear your prayer. But, just to give you that basic understanding, all right, when you translate, the pure language into another tongue meaning another language, it loses its meaning. This is the reason why when you read the scriptures, all right, especially verbatim, all right, you don't really gain the proper meaning or understanding. And an example of that is, when people read things like John 3:16, they read it verbatim. When it mentions that for the Most High, gave his only begotten Son, for the whole world, roughly paraphrasing. When you go into that word world, we know that it was translated from the Greek, all right, from the Hebrew to the Greek, and from the Greek to Latin, and from Latin to English. All right. And when you actually go into that Greek word for world, it's cosmos, which does not mean the entire planet. It does not mean the entire inhabitants of the universe. All right. It's speaking of a harmonious arrangement, order. Okay, that started in the heavens with the Heavenly Father ordaining Yahweh Shai, the first spirit ever created, down to the Alahayim, the angels, and the elect. Okay, the first fruits. So there's a orderly arrangement. Okay, and you must understand that, or you have when you go into the certain Hebrew words in the Old Testament to get a better understanding. So yeah, let me read this again. It says, "Wherefore let me entreat you to read it with favor and attention, and to pardon us wherein we may seem to come short of some words which we have labored to interpret. For the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them. And not only these things, but the law itself and the prophets and the rest of the books have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language." That's why it's important. We always get on brothers that come into the truth that it's always important to know a little bit of Hebrew, to know a little bit of the Greek. Sometimes you may have to dip into the Latin because you can't just read the Bible verbatim. All right. You'll get a lot of proper understanding when you go back to the original language from whence the scriptures was written out of. All right. And this is why a lot of Christians stumble, because they don't know the scriptures. They don't go into the Hebrew like we do. All right. So now let's get some we'll finish with the scriptures. So, now during this time, I want to say up until about the time of the Babylonian Empire, you had a situation with let me see here. You had a situation with Esdras. Now I have to find it because I had it once. And, let me see. I was looking at it. I was trying to put this together for you, Akim. But I just got to find it. So please bear with me. Is this it? No, that's for later. Here we go. This is what I want. Now, you had a prophet by the name of Ezra who was responsible during his tenure under the Medo-Persian Empire. And basically what he did was he transcribed the scriptures. And when you look up, matter of fact, let me do this because I don't want to butcher it. So Salakia, I want to give you a time frame. Let me find my Bible real quick. Let's go to this Bible app and let's go to King James, and I'm going to go to Ezra real quick. All right. So just to give you, all right, introduction says, in the Hebrew Bible, the books of Ezra and Nehemiah formed a single scroll or book. They were also kept together as a single book in the Greek Septuagint Bible, but were separated into two books in the Latin Vulgate Bible. You see, it was translated, right? So it went from Hebrew to Greek, from Greek to Latin, all right, and then finally to English, all right? When you look up the timeline, it says in the Hebrew Bible, the book Ezra and Nehemiah is the next to last book, which is not unexpected since it is one of the latest books to be written. Importantly, these books of Ezra and Nehemiah are the only narrative record of the post-exile rebuilding era in Jerusalem and the Judean region that is included in the Hebrew Bible. The first 6 chapters of Ezra relate the return of the groups of Judeans from their exile into Babylonia, freed by official decree by Cyrus the Great, the Persian conqueror of Babylonia. It says the decree even allows the initial returnees to take with them the sacred temple vessels that Nebuchadnezzar had taken as booty when the Babylonian forces had looted and destroyed Jerusalem. All right. Let me see. Yeah, here it is. It says the section from 4.7 to 6.18 of Ezra is written in Aramaic, at the time the official and diplomatic language of the Persian Empire. All right, so like I said, during the Medo-Persian Empire, it says Aramaic is used here because citation of these official documents in their original language instead of in the Hebrew translation is more authoritative. All right, it says the narrative reveals that construction work on the rebuilding of the temple is repeatedly delayed by political and societal problems, and at one point work grinds to a halt until a new Persian king, Darius I, which is just a title, takes the throne and orders the work to resume. And the completion and dedication of the rebuilt temple in year 515 BC is described in chapter 6. So the main point here is that the scrolls, they were officially translated into another tongue, be that of Aramaic, because Hebrew and Aramaic is not the same thing. You have people out there that believe that Aramaic is the same thing. They'll say that so-called Jesus spoke to Saul in an Aramaic tongue, which is bullshit. He spoke to Saul in the Hebrew tongue, the Lashawan Qadash, and we'll prove that a little bit later on. But just to get back to the point where it's circled here, when you go into the Samaritan Chronicle Adler, all right, because they believe that Ezra corrupted the Torah, which he didn't. All right, it was the fact that because our people were exiled, being mingled amongst the heathens, they they had to pretty much convert to what they was doing, like the calendar system. When you go into the history, our forefathers converted to the Babylonian calendar, and then also the language. All right, they reverted to the Chaldean language, the Aramaic language. It wasn't the fact that Ezra had corrupted the Torah because he had to rewrite the language. No. It says the Adler Chronicle also correctly notes that at the time of Ezra, that Hebrew was extinct among the general Israelite population who had mass converted to a new language of Aramaic. This makes perfect sense and explains why Ezra comprised by converting the Paleo-Hebrew Torah into the Aramaic Hebrew square. And that's all he did. In other words, I can't show it, but anyway, in other words, again, well, let's go out of this. Let me just show you. So what he basically did, let's come back to my Paleo folder, is if we have a look here, he took the original, characters that you see at the top, and he changed it to the Assyrian Aramaic square script at the bottom. But notice in the pronunciation, the pronunciation stayed the same. Okay. The pronunciation stayed the same. The only thing that changed during his time was the how the characters were written. All right. So you still had the same pronunciation. Okay. So now what seems to be the issue? Well, the issue is this. During the time of the 1800s, you had a man by the name of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yehuda. All right. And as a matter of fact, before we read that, let me just pull this up, on Google, so somebody can say, you just made that up. You just trying to, no. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yehudi. I'll just put that in. In the creation of the Nikud vowel system with the Masoretes. All right, so now this is what AI says, right? It says Rabbi Eliezer ben Yehudi was not involved in the creation of the Nikud vowel system. The Masoretes, a group of Ish scholars, developed it in the 7th to 10th century CE. The Masoretes based primarily in Tiberias, aimed to standardize the pronunciation and reading of the Hebrew Bible by adding diacritical marks to the consonantal text. And why is that? Because when you go into the original letters of the Hebrew alphabet, it consists of 22 letters, which all 22 letters are consonantal sounds. It's there's only two vowel sounds. That's I and and I. Right now, it says this system helped preserve the correct pronunciation of the Hebrew text, especially as Hebrew was becoming less commonly spoken. Yada yada. It says Masoretes in the Qud. The Masoretes were a group of Ish scholars active from the 5th to the 10th centuries. They meticulously copied and studied the Hebrew Bible, developing a system of vowel markings called Qud to preserve the correct pronunciation of the text. Now, that's what they did, but when I looked this up on chat, all right, it says, because chat broke it down for me. I went to the chat GPT. It says the Masoretes around 6, you could say 5, 6, 10th century AD created the Qud vowel point system, which we read, replacing the original sound structure and training people to read Hebrew differently. Now, these Masoretes, they were Edomites, okay? It says Eliezer ben Yehuda, late 1800s, revived modern Hebrew as a national language for Zionism, blending biblical vocabulary with European grammar and pronunciation. It says scholars themselves admit Paleo-Hebrew is older, but they push the narrative that the original pronunciation is lost, which GMS rejects, right? And we reject that because it's not lost. And we're going to show you in the scriptures that it was prophesied for us to get our language back. Not that we will speak it fluently, all right? But even the Most High prophesied, he said, the elect shall praise his holy name, all right? And he did say that we will speak the language of Canaan, all right? He didn't say we was going to speak it fluently, you see? But see, even ChatGPT gives you a little bit of the history pertaining to the Masoretes. And Eliezer helping to forward the blending of that vocabulary and expounding upon it. And the reason why they did that, if you ask, was because, remember, before taking over the Holy Land, they created Judaism. So with the creation of Judaism, it only made sense for them to add the these different vowel point sounds and whatnot in the grammar and the pronunciation and change it to suit their own people. As a matter of fact, if you want to get even more technical, when you look up who is Esau Edom PDF, I'm gonna show you something by Charles Wiseman real quick. Let's see if I can do this off the fly. It's been a while, but let's see what we can do. Okay. Now, if we go to, let's see. Let me see. I got to remember which page it was on. Okay, this will work. Let me see. Okay, here it is right here. Now, if you own a copy of this book, you already know where I'm going. If not, it's okay. You can look it up on a PDF just as I did now. And if you go to page 11, this little paragraph right here, when you deal with the Khazars, which are Edomites that made their religion based upon Judaism, which is what they came up with. Now, it says real here, I'm going to read this middle passage. It says, as the Khazars left their homeland of Khazaria and migrated north and west, they lost their name and became known as Jews. their Yiddish language and alphabet is not that of the Israelites, Phoenician Greek style, but a amalgamation of Aramaic, medieval German, Slavic, and Russian dialects. You see that? And this is by Charles Wiseman. Matter of fact, you had another small hatter by the name of Benjamin H. Freeman, who wrote a book called Facts is Facts. And he also speaks about this in his book, Facts of Facts. I actually got a hard copy of that. But I can't get it right now. But Lord's will, I'll probably take some pictures of the pages and I'll post them up so you Akim can see. But he pretty much said the same thing, just in a different way, and acknowledged the fact that today's current Hebrew, which we should, if you claim to be a scholar, which a scholar means a student. If you claim to be a student of the scriptures, you should know this. All right, that the Hebrew that they use today is not the original Hebrew of the Israelites. All right, so for you clowns out there that get on, Israelites from the camps and stuff talking about something, you guys don't even know the real Hebrew. You can't even speak the real Hebrew. You just, do yourself a favor and just be quiet and just learn, because you really don't know what you're talking about at the end of the day. Okay. So let me see, what else did I want? So yeah, it says here back in Google, why Nakah was needed. It says Hebrew originally lacked vowel letters, relying on context for pronunciation. As Hebrew usage declined, the Masoretes sought to ensure accurate transmission of the text by adding vowel sounds, and that's just the bullshit that they spew out to you. It wasn't the fact that it lacked vowels, because when you actually look up the Hebrew, let's get a new tab. When you look up how many vowel sounds were in the Paleo/Phoenician Hebrew. Let me see. It says Paleo Hebrew, like Phoenician, was written as a abjad, meaning it primarily represented consonants, right? While there were no explicit vowel letters, certain consonants, like the Hebrew letters there, you have the yad, the ah. All right, it says were sometimes used to indicate vowel sounds. The exact number of vowel sounds is difficult to determine. Wow. See how Esau keep changing this shit? It says as they were not consistently written, but rather implied by the context and pronunciation of the consonants. It says Paleo Hebrew and Phoenician had 22 letters, all representing consonants. All right. Let me see. So they don't have it here. Let me see. Let's see if I could find it. Let me see. Because I remember looking it up. Might have to type it in different. Let me see. Did ancient Hebrew only have 2 vowel sounds ending in ah and how did they say it in the Greek? I think it was spelled I-E. Something like that. Let me see. Because I remember looking this up a while ago. If I can't find it, it's all good. It's all good. Oh, let's try it this way. What were the 2 sounds in the ancient Hebrew? Ancient Hebrew had three short vowel sounds and their corresponding long vowel counterparts. The short vowels were similar to the I in father, the et in bed, and the I or E in machine. And they kind of went off there. Let's see. Additionally, there were also sounds for O and U, but these were often represented by the same letters. That comes after their Nakud system. So you got to be careful because, all right, you know what? We're going to go to the chat. Enough with this foolishness. All right, let's go to the chat. All right, let's see here. What were the two vowel sounds in the Paleo / Phoenician Hebrew? See what chat has to say. There it is. Look, man, chat is right on point. It says in the Paleo Hebrew and its close cousin Phoenician, there was no written vowel system like the Masoretic Nakud points you see in modern Hebrew. Instead, the vowel sounds were understood from context and oral tradition. Based on historical linguistics and GMS understanding of the ancient tongue, two core vowel sounds. Ah, the primary vowel sound appearing in most syllables. This is why you see names like Yahweh, Yasharala, Yahawashai rendered with that ah sound. And I, a secondary vowel sound used in some words, forms, and endings. For an example, in Yahawashai, Bunyamin for Benjamin, or Aki, brother. Okay. Key points. Paleo Hebrew was a consonantal script. You only wrote the consonants and the vowels were remembered by the people. GMS teaches that modern Hebrew AEIOU system is an Edomite innovation via the Masoretes. Which we read. The ancient pronunciation was much simpler and centered on these two vowel sounds. You see that? That simplicity is part of why Zephaniah 3 and 9 calls it a pure language, fewer alterations, easier to preserve. That's why we had to read in the prologue in Sirach that when they said pardon us, why they tried to, translate the language into another tongue. Because when you translate it, it loses its meaning, its true meaning. And like I said earlier, the English language is one of the hardest languages, man, because you have so many words that have different meanings. All right. So look, another win for the chat, man. Chat is on point with it. All right. So let's get back to the lesson. So the vowel points in the Hebrew were added. It says the Masoretic points vowel Hebrew, or as the system is now called, Mazorah. All right. And Masar, to hand down, Mazorah meaning tradition. The rabbis who busied themselves with the Mazorah were called Masoretes, and they were also the inventors of the Masoretic points, which are supposed to give the vowelless words of the scriptures their true pronunciation and meanings by the addition of points representing vowels to the consonants. All right. So they tried to sit there and, doctor it up and, fabricate it and add on to it, man. It says this was the invention of the rabbis of the school of Tiberius in the 9th century AD. By doing this, they attached their understanding to the words and names in their texts of the Hebrew Bible. All right. So that's how that's pretty much what they did. Now, what you're going to find is after Ezra transcribed the language, we ended up losing our heritage. All right. This is Jeremiah 17:4. It says, and thou even thyself shalt discontinue from thy heritage, okay, that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thy enemies in the land which thou knowest not, for ye have kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever. So part of losing our heritage was we didn't just get kicked out of the land, but we lost our identity as being Israelites, and we also lost the language. That's part of our heritage. We lost the Lashawan Qadash. All right. But the Lord said this is Baruch chapter 2, I'm going to start at verse 29. It says, if you will not hear my voice, surely this very great multitude shall be turned into a small number among the nations, where I will scatter them. For I knew that they will not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people. But in the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves. So in the land of our captivities, mainly here in Babylon, the Great America, and also wherever the Israelites are scattered, we were going to remember ourselves. Part of remember ourselves is also remembering our heritage, being the Israelites, the language that we spoke, which is the Lashawan Qadash. It says, verse 31, and shall know that I am Yahweh their power, for I will give them a heart and ears to hear. It says, and they shall praise me in the land of their captivity and thank upon my name. Now, how are we going to think upon the name of the Heavenly Father if we don't know the true name in the ancient Paleo Hebrew? He said we were going to think upon his name, right? But he also said this. Let's get Isaiah 44. I'm going to start at the top. It says, yet now hear, O Jacob, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen. Thus saith Yahweh that made thee, and formed thee from the womb, which will help thee. Fear not, O Jacob, my servant, and thou Jeshurun, whom I have chosen. It says, for I will pour water upon him that is thirsty, and floods upon the dry ground. And I will pour my spirit upon thy seed, and my blessing upon thy offspring. And they shall spring up as among the grass, as willows by the water courses, right? It says, and one shall say, I am Yahweh's, and another shall call himself by the name of Jacob, Yasharallah, or Yaiquab, and another shall subscribe with his hand unto Yahweh, and surname himself by the name of Israel, which is an indication that we will be calling our names. That's why you see a lot of brethren have Hebrew names. Okay, because we surnamed ourselves. All right. And then you add that with this here, Isaiah 19 and 18, which is a prophecy. It says, and in that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt. And this is speaking of Babylon the Great. This is not speaking of literal Egypt. All right. It says, speak the language of Canaan and swear to Yahweh of hosts, one shall be called the city of destruction. That's how we know it's talking about America, because America is that city of destruction. Okay. That's what it's talking about, Babylon the Great. All right. Which is spiritually known as Sodom and Egypt, referring to Revelation, the 11th chapter. So it said that in the land of Egypt, Babylon the Great America, we're going to speak the language of Canaan. All right. Now, a simple Google search. All right. What is the language of Canaan? It says the language of Canaan most often refers to Hebrew, particularly in the context of the Iron Age kingdoms of Israel and Judah. It's also used more broadly to encompass the Canaanite languages, a group of, it should be Shemitic languages that were spoken in the Levant during ancient times. Specifically, Phoenician is another notable Canaanite language. Now, what's important about this? Well, notice it said among the Shemitic languages, because you also had something that was called the Moabite stone. All right, which this stone is confirmation that the Lashawan Qadash was actually spoken in a prototype. It was written in a Phoenician character script. All right, and the name of our Heavenly Father Yahweh is found on this stone. It mentions Yahweh. Okay, just reading here off the picture proves the Lord's name is not Ahia, because you have Israelites out there that'll call on Ahia, Ashar, Ahia, right? Which that's not the name. It's not Yah, not Yahweh, not Yahu, or Yahuwah, or Yahudi, or Jah. No, it's Yahweh, right? And so, also to further prove, all right, this is what is the difference between Yiddish and Hebrew? It says Hebrew is a Shemitic language, a subgroup of the Afro-Asiatic languages spoken across the Middle East, while Yiddish is German dialect, which integrates many languages, including German, Hebrew, Aramaic, various Slavic and Romanist languages. While Yiddish does use some Hebrew words and it's written in the Hebrew alphabet, Yiddish is actually more closely related to German and Slavic languages than it is to Hebrew. And the Hebrew alphabet has 22 letters, which are all consonants. Vowels in Hebrew are deduced from context and from marks above and below the Hebrew letters. In Yiddish, silent Hebrew letters become vowels, and letters which are used as both consonants and vowels are read according to context. And some marks below letters are used as well, but take on a different sound in the Hebrew. All right, so there's just total confusion. Now, one thing I want to point out as well is here is a visual aid as to how the language was written. All right, when you go back to the time of Adam, at the very top, you would have had that sort of writing style. Yahweh on the left and then Yahweh Shah on the right. And then you have early Hebrew, which would have been around the time of Abraham. Okay. When you look this up, they would have said that that's how they would have wrote it during his time. And then during the time of Moses and them, all right, they took on the Phoenician prototype script. All right. And then you have today modern script. All right. The names Yahweh and Yahweh Shai. All right. And when you look on the side here, it gives you the way to pronounce it in the red letters. Abba, Gada, Ha, Wa, Za, Ha, Ta. Okay. Ya, Ka. All right. La, Ma, Na, Sa, Ai, Pa, Taza, Kwa, Ra, Sha, Tha. Very simple. All right. Now, here's how we know that they didn't, when you follow the last, well, not the last, but when you follow two particular captivities, this is evident proof that after the Medo-Persian Empire, when Ezra transcribed the language, our forefathers, they didn't keep that Assyrian script. They actually stuck to the Lashawan Qadash, because here I have an image of some coinage from 135 to 104 BC during the time of John Hyrcanus, during the Maccabean period. And as you can see, the coinage has Paleo-Hebrew script, not Assyrian script. So this is well after the Babylonian Assyria captivity, even the Medo-Persian captivity, right? That's just one. Here's another one. This is two Israelite coins during the Maccabean rule, circa 130 BC. And as you can see on the coins themselves, that's Phoenician Paleo-Hebrew script, not Assyrian. And then when we come over here, all right, once again, Simon Maccabees. This is the coinage that they have. That is Paleo-Hebrew script, as you can see right here. All right. Not Assyrian script, but Paleo-Hebrew. So our forefathers kept the tradition. Now, when you go to the ancient Roman Empire, it's the same thing. It says Ish coinage during the first revolt against Rome. So this, when you have a look at their money, they were not using the Assyrian script. That's how we know that Yahweh Shai did not speak the Aramaic. He spoke the actual Paleo-Hebrew to Saul. Okay, and this can all be searched online. Learn how to look up your history. Okay, these are coinages from the time of the first revolt of Rome between 66 and 73 CE, right up until the time of the sack of the temple. Look at the coinage. It was all in Paleo-Hebrew script, not Assyrian script. So this is how we know, all right, we weren't speaking or writing in the Assyrian script. We were actually writing in the Paleo-Hebrew script. But after the sack of the temple by the Romans, we were dispersed, right? And then they try to make it out as if during the between the 5th and the 10th century, these Masoretes just came and then they claim it to be us, which they weren't us, and they just revamped the whole language. That's where people get confused. You see? So, yeah, touched on that. We'll get ready to close out, get a few more. All right. Let's get this here. This is Zephaniah 3:9 says, "For then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of Yahweh to serve him with one consent." And we've been given that language back. And this is purely based on faith. You know, you still gonna have certain people that's not gonna agree with the Lashawan Qadash, but that's okay. We don't care about those people. All right. This is purely based upon faith. We believe. You know. Let me see here. There's something else I had wanted to get. When you come here, Yahweh Bashim Yahushua Barakatah, those are the names. Okay. The top modern Hebrew script, and then the bottom, the ancient Paleo Hebrew script. And then it gives you the precepts here. All right. Ecclesiasticus Prologue 1. For the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them. All right. We read that. All right. They changed anytime they change the language, all right, it's not going to have the same meaning in it. It gives you Acts 4:12. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is no other name. That's why we don't call on Jesus the Christ. His name is Yahweh Shai when you go back to the ancient Paleo Hebrew. All right. So, yeah. I'm just trying to think, was there anything else I had wanted to? Oh, one more. Now, this is from Ecuador, okay? This is a elephant tablet found in Ecuador, all right? Which it says or reads, "The bed of death is where the beating made a cave. There dwells the lame mechanisms. There lies the dish that tipped the top and shagged all." Now, they had a little bit of a debate, some of the scholars, when they were trying to translate this, and they came to find out that the stone was upside down. So when they turned it the other way around, they read it in the Lashawan Qadash. It says problem down at the bottom. The N is still rotated. Recall these same symbols from the Newberry tablet in Paleo Hebrew. It says the X was the T translated as tie, and that little symbol was a P and translated as a hook or a pole. Together they formed the TP, suggesting tip or top, and this repeats the idea of rotation, the top tipped. You see? Showing you that the Israelites came to the Americas, man. This was found written on stone. It's like what more proof do you want, man? You know? But, that's the whole point, because again, there's no, oh yeah, we'll get that. Let's go back to Google. There are no EOU, Salakia, in the Paleo Hebrew. Let me see. Ancient Paleo only used I and U vowels. U, they got it wrong. There was no U. Let me see. See, now they gotten very they gotten very good at trying to hide the truth. Let me see if they got it in Wikipedia real quick, and then we'll close out. So went way over time, but it's all good, man. As long as this truth is coming out. Let me see. No, they're not gonna. Let me see. And y'all can look this up too, man. It's a lot of good history. Let me see. Yeah, nah, Esau covered it up. But basically, I bet if I typed it into chat, it'll come up. Chat been going in as of lately. But yeah, nevertheless, getting back to this, the name is Yahweh, not Yahweh, not Yahuwah. All right, you can screenshot this if you want. Okay, because this refers to the Yiddish language. That's why they call him Yahuwah. All right, but there's no U sound in the Shemitic languages. All right. And you have to understand that. You have to know when you go back to the Greek, how they changed the letters and stuff of the alphabet, man. Okay, between the Y sound and the U sound. All right. But anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it. I pray that this lesson was edifying, and I just wanted to tap into some of that, images, going into a couple of interesting facts dealing with history of what actually happened, and also proving, that the languages of the heavens, as we, read, let's get that, because I did say I was going to bring that out. Let's get Acts. We'll end it on this 26th chapter. Red letter. All right. Acts 26:14. And when we were all fallen to the earth, I heard a voice speaking unto me and saying in the Hebrew tongue. What Hebrew you think the Messiah spoke in? He spoke in the Lashawan Qadash. Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. When you look up this Hebrew, Hebraeus, all right, it says Hebraics, Hebrew, or Jewish Chaldee language. It's not the Chaldee, it's the actual Hebrew. It says Hebrew, the Hebrew language, not that, however, in which the Old Testament was written, but the Chaldee. And you see they throw that in there, all right? But when you go back to this, it goes back to Eber, Ibar, okay? Hebrew origin, our forefather, because it goes back to the Hebrew. He spoke the Hebrew language. He didn't speak no damn Chaldea Aramaic, all right? All right, remember, it was going to be returned unto us a pure way. That pretty much concludes the lesson. Once again, like I said, it's always good to go back over this stuff, to give you just a simple, basic understanding. And before I do end it, this is a channel that you brothers can subscribe. I'll try to put it in the description box, but it's called GMS Learn the Hebrew. All right. And if those of you who really want to learn, this brother has tons of videos going into prayers. All right. And many more things that you can check out. All right. Very edifying channel. So with that, once again, I pray that this lesson was edifying, and I want to give all praise, glory, and honor be to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakah Qadash. Double honors to the beloved apostles and elders of Great Millstone, better known as GMS, who rule well. Peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect, the tabernacle of David. Shalom.